Good morning, ladies. I'm not sure if there's anyone else who's still outside, but if there is, please do come through. How stunning do you guys look today? You look amazing. I really get very emotional whenever we have these Sowetan Women's Club conversations, particularly ones where we are all in the room together, because I know how much it means to many of you who are our members. I just want to welcome you. My name is Nwabisa Makunga. I'm the editor of the Sowetan. And on behalf of this club, I want to welcome you today and say thank you so much. Thank you for your support. Thank you so much for joining us and being consistent in showing up every single time we say, come, let's have a conversation. Today's one is really exciting. We've partnered with the Gautrain, our partners for this event, to really celebrate women on the move. We're celebrating not only a message that is aligned as far as us, as far as us as the brand, but we really are celebrating women who've moved the needle, women who consistently change the game, flip the script, and really ensure that there is change in the spaces in which we all occupy. I want to say thank you again to the Gautrain for being our supporters of today. We absolutely would not be able to do this without you. And without any further ado, I want to call Barbara Foster, who is Head of Communication at the Gautrain. Please give a warm round of applause.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome, and sorry for being a couple of minutes late. Joburg water is digging up almost all our neighborhood. We complain if we don't have any services or when we have an aging infrastructure, and then we complain when we're stuck in the traffic that the repairs cause us. So we're never satisfied. So welcome. I love the women on the move. It sounds just about right. Thank you. Also a special word of welcome to my team that sits at the table in front of me, the GMA team, the GMA Women on the Move. My team always does this to me, and then they say, "Would you please speak at an event like this?" And I say, "Yes." And then I say, "Please brief me what I should say." And they say, "Yes," they'll brief me. And then I get an email with 2 bullet points. So I have to now remind myself on what is that email with 2 bullet points, which I can't remember, so I'll have to wing it this morning. I also don't know how long I have to speak. My husband always says, I think I'm the Oprah of South Africa. So, Joanne, be careful, you've got competition. I'm retiring next year, so I have to look at a second career. So maybe I should practice this Oprah of South Africa. Women and Women's Month. We do celebrate Women's Month at Gautrain. I'm not a firm believer in it because, as I think you all do, I don't think we have much to celebrate in South Africa as women's in Women's Month, with all the gender-based violence still out there. But that does not mean we have to sit back and do nothing, because if we don't do anything, who is going to do something about it? Because if we have to leave it to some of the leaders of our country to do anything, and I'm really hanging out very far the window now, in a lot of years nothing has happened. So hopefully, if it's not up to us, who is going to do it? I just want to share some of the incredible history of women on Gautrain. When we started with the planning of Gautrain, I arrived at Zebra Country Lodge. It was in 2000, and there was this bunch of men sitting around a table, and we were 2 women, me and another black lady, and she was an electrical engineer. And the two of us sort of looked at each other across the table, and we waved at each other. And this was in 2000. And Nwabisa Makunga at that stage was the premier, and he said, this project will be feasible, make it feasible. So we started the feasibility study. And I sat next to an engineer, and when they spoke about bogies, I sort of went, what's a bogie? A bogie is the engine that makes the train runs. So that was me in 2000, starting on this absolutely incredible project. So I was the comms person. Tlani was an electrical engineer. Tlani left quite soon. She went to work in the UK. At that stage, black engineers came at quite a price, and she was headhunted. But what was incredible about this project is that communication was seen as a core function. I sat at the executive table. I was the media person, I was the brand person, I was the functions person. But I did not parachute in when there was a problem. I knew at every moment what was happening at in the project. I was their conscience. So when the bunch of engineers made a decision, I would go, oh, that won't work, because you are interacting or interfering in a community. We had incredible things that we did. We went to the Joburg Wildlife Veterinary Hospital the other day. We're working currently, Gautrain Wild about wildlife, and working with the pangolins. And there was a lady that reminded me of something that we did when we started with the environmental, when we actually started with construction. We took all the environmental entities on the route first, and to take away all the endangered species, such as the grass owls, that only nest in the Gauteng high-felled grass. And what we also did is the sangomas went in, because some of the plants, the medicinal plants that grows in that area, only grows in that area. So we really did amazing things, and the sangomas blessed the land. So, I stood back and I thought, oh yes, we did all those things. And also in an incredible tradition, which I would like to share with you today, and we forgot about things, and if we don't tell these stories, I did a speech two weeks ago at GIPS at a masterclass, and I spoke about stakeholder management and stakeholder relations. And stakeholder management and stakeholder relations is quite sophisticated, and we do it at a very sophisticated level. We've won awards for it. We've won international awards for Gautrain stakeholder management. But we also do it at a very grassroots level, because we're Africans and we love to tell stories. And we never should forget that. And we never should lose the touch of our Africanness. And what we did with, in this incredible storytelling tradition is that Gautrain, we had in one section of our tunnel, in our tunnel drilling construction, well, I said what Gautrain has taught me with construction is that the personal lessons I took from that is, if you hit an obstacle, such as hard rock, you build a tunnel and get through it. And if you look at a relationship, just build a tunnel and get through it, or build a bridge and get over it. What we did with the section between Rosebank and Park Station, the rock was so hard, some of the hardest rock in the world. We had to use a tunnel boring machine. It's a factory on wheels. And it propels itself forward by drilling this big, massive drill bit at the front. And while it drills, it clads the tunnel at the back. It was an amazing bit of machinery. And we had the whole of South Africa wanted to write stories about the tunnel boring machine. But worldwide, there's a tradition of naming tunnel boring machines after women. So the evening the tunnel boring machine came home, I sat having a dinner table monologue discussion with my husband, because I normally have that. He just go, yes, dear, no, dear. Please pass the salt, dear. Do you still have enough wine, dear? And I was sort of going on, and I said, I actually can't. Why do you think they name tunnel boring machines after women? I just can't understand that. And he looks at me and he said, I 100% understand why they name a machine that drills through the hardest rock in the world after women. So we decided, on this project, in this lifespan, we may only have one tunnel boring machine. And we're not going to celebrate only one woman. Because what are you going to, if you call it after a black woman, after a white woman, we're forever going to have political problems. So guess what we called it? Any one of you would guess what we called our tunnel boring machine? To celebrate all women in South Africa? In Bukada, to celebrate all the wonderful, brave, incredible mothers, sisters, daughters that made you sitting here today possible. Those brave women that marched on the 9th of August, 1956, to the Union buildings with babies strapped to their backs, facing the brunt of the apartheid's police, tear gas, rubber bullets. And that is what we called our tunnel boring machine. And that was also the second time I saw Nwabisa Makunga in tears. The first time was, that was the first time. The second time was when we had the first test run on the first Gautrain on a rainy day in Birmingham in the UK. But that is what I want to celebrate today. All these wonderful, beautiful women sitting in front of me today, and all those that went before us, in the wonderful tradition of Gautrain for women on the move. Thank you very much.
Barbara, thank you so much. And I can tell you, so many of us can actually relate to not only the stories that you're telling, but really the journey that many of you have gone through for us to be where we are today. And I can tell you, I'm going to call up my guests just now, but before I do, I want to welcome anybody who is joining us on our virtual platforms. You are very much part of this conversation. Please do not forget to put your short story about a woman who inspires you, a woman who had changed the game for you. And some of those stories may be published in the print or digital platforms of the Sowetan. Ladies, you will all see there is, on your seats, there is a goodie bag, which does include a book by one of our guests, who I'm going to call up shortly. Barbara, you speak about tunnels. You speak about women who are sitting, just two of you in a boardroom. And I can tell you, nobody knows that very well. Nobody knows that better than the panelists I'm going to call up today. Mabo Malaza is the head of learning and development and transformation at Harmony Gold. She is a mining lady, and I can tell you, ladies, nobody speaks about transformation in the mining industry with such passion and knowledge like Mabo does. Please do give her a round of a warm welcome. And next up is a face and voice that is very familiar to all of us. One of my faves, I will say. Joanne Joseph is a seasoned broadcaster and media personality. She's also the author of the book that you are having on your seats today, called Children of the Sugarcane. I'm sure many of you know Joanne. Please do come up on stage. And of course, another fave of mine, she is our cover star of the S-Mag magazine this month, this Women's Month, our celebration, of women. She is a DJ, radio personality. Lamise Holworthy, please do come on stage. So you're all welcome to join this conversation, right? I'm not going to be the only one kind of chatting to these phenomenal women. But I do want to say, let me just look at you right, okay. But I do want to say, I'm really excited by the concept of Women on the Move. And really how it came about, the team and I were sitting on, in the office downstairs, and I was looking through, and we're talking about, Gautrain and this partnership. And we're looking through a print version of the Sowetan. And it hadn't occurred to me at the time, obviously, Gautrain is for people on the move. And it hadn't occurred to me that actually our slogan, our own slogan as Sowetan, is that it's a platform for people in the know and people on the move. So not only are we here as a brand alignment, but we really, I think it's what anchors our conversation this morning. And Maba, I want to start with you. I mean, you and I had this conversation yesterday. Yeah. 15 years or so in the mining industry, you get there and it's almost like barren land as far as women, and transformation is. Yeah. Just tell us a little bit about that journey, what took you there, and really what it is that you've done to be where you are today.
Nwabisa, thank you. And I must say this is such a wonderful platform, and thank you very much for having me. And wow, I still remember the day, 7th of September, way back in 2007, I believe. I landed myself a graduate development program position in the mining industry, and having been in the retail, which was very female-dominated, I landed myself at an operation. We call them shafts, somewhere in Carltonville. And when I got there, the place was dusty. I had my heels on, I had my corporate suit on, and wow. I got into an office that looked like a storeroom, and I thought, okay, okay. And the first thing they said, ma'am, we wear safety shoes. Your heels are a safety hazard in the environment where we are. Because the office was at the back end, where, very close to a lamp room, and it's slippery, it's rocky, and on all sorts. And I said, okay. And yeah, I got there, and, fast forward that, I realized there were very few of us in the different positions. And as coming in, the graduate development program at the time was a management in training. So the exit of that 2-year program was to be appointed as a manager, which was really, when you look at the numbers, the numbers were low. And I remember going into that operation, and I thought, what kind of an environment is this? But I need to make it. It's quite fascinating. And part of the program was I needed to spend more time underground. Although I was coming in as a graduate trainee for HR, the most part of the first 6 months, I was underground every day, getting to understand how the mining value chain works. And it was a very structured program, and I fell in love with that environment. I fell in love with the language, although now it's not an official language, because we had to do away with that language, Fanakalo. And I still remember I was called, Pikinini Katina, meaning, the young one.
Oh, wow.
So it was quite fascinating. I fell in love with the culture, and the program was very self-paced. And because I was coming in as a young person, working with people that have been there for 20, 25 years, 30 years, I really, hung on to their experience. And fast forward to that, I finished the program before the allocated time. I was then appointed into a role of an HR manager. And it was so fascinating that I got to realize that HR in mining is really not HR anywhere else. Not at all. I was doing HR in retail, I was doing HR in an academic space, but HR in mining is definitely it's no match.
You know, if I may, you know, one of the things I find most fascinating about you is that, and it's something that I actually agree with. So as a society, and when we talk about women and our own empowerment, I think one of the things I find fascinating is that you talk about how we have moved, yes, the needle from representation.
Yes.
So representation absolutely matters,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But it was really the first step.
Yeah.
So your passion is really about how do we turn representation and really make a change in an environment.
Yes.
And just small things that are actually quite profound, but are seen as small things. How do we change an environment to make it one that is fully inclusive?
Yeah.
We're not there yet, but how have you done that?
You know, when I took the role of a group transformation manager, I got to realize that it's really not about employment equity. It's not about the numbers, it's not about representation. It was around how do we transform this industry of ours from the infrastructure point of view. And infrastructure, I'm talking about ablution facilities underground that are for women, that are conducive for women. It was really talking about, you know, the PPE. You know, the industry was doing a lot of research around PPE for women, but the problem is it was men that were talking about those issues. They don't get to understand that we've got bigger calves. They don't understand that one-piece overall, it's not suitable for us, especially when you really need to go, when you are underground. It means you have to strap down from here, right down if you need to go underground. And then I realized that, yes, the representation is very important, and that can be addressed in the learning and development space, where I had to really focus on what numbers are we putting in our learning and development strategy and plan. But over and above that, what are the infrastructural facilities that are available for us women, for women to feel included? As simple as a PPE, underground ablution facilities, an environment where we can say, we understand that we are the minority in the mining environment. At the same time, let's create safe our working spaces. So, you know, approaches such as no women will work alone in a remote area underground, making available, you know, your whistles underground for any safety risks. And the collaboration with the industry, our bodies like in the Mineral Council and the regulators really brought those conversations, because now it was women that were talking about those conversations. And I think that was the beginning of our journey in transforming that environment. We're not there yet, but I think a lot we're making strides in that environment.
Absolutely. Joanne, I want to bring you into the conversation. You recently published your book, and I think the main character in your book, as I understand it, was really inspired by your great-grandmother. And I want to perhaps just start off by asking you what you believe, if you believe that she perhaps was one of the people who laid a foundation, you know, not only for yourself, but essentially for the generations that came after, and what of her do you think, you know, mirrors who Joanne is today?
Thanks, Nwabisa, and thank you everyone for being here this morning. It really is fantastic to be with you. So yes, it's a story about a part of history that hasn't really been told in much detail, the story of indenture in South Africa. It was a period during which British colonized Africa essentially brought about 152,000, just over 152,000 Indian laborers to the colony of Natal and other spaces to labor here in order to support their enterprise. And my grandmother was one of those people. Her name was Adalachmi Velonaikan. She came in 1884. She left from a place now called Tamil Nadu, what was then the Madras Presidency in India. And what I was able to glean from the archive about her was that she left with younger family members. Very unusual for a young Indian woman to have traveled on her own with her younger siblings during that time without a male chaperone or without parents, which suggested to me some kind of catastrophe had befallen the family. It was very likely, given the situation in India at the time, having been colonized by the British, their economy torn to pieces, their lives upended by colonization, the uprooting of their normal agricultural practices, as well as natural disasters at the time, forced many of them into a situation where they had to decide whether they wanted to stay in India, whether they could feasibly stay on and survive in India, or whether this might be an opportunity to get away from the disaster that had become India at the time. And I suspect that she was one of those people who decided she was going to get on a ship to South Africa, and, well, what is now South Africa, and she was going to try to make a living for herself and her siblings in any of the enterprises, the sugarcane fields, the Natal government railways, some of the other big enterprises that on which they were put to work. And it's interesting, the idea about my great-grandmother came about, or my idea to research her life came about when I had my daughter. And I realized, well, my husband's got a very traceable family tree. On my mother's side of the family, I know very little about the women. I know very little about anybody, in fact, because it's just not spoken about. And why is it not spoken about? And so I started those conversations with my mother. And unfortunately, she wasn't able to answer my questions because there had been a kind of tacit vow of silence in the family when it came to my grandmother's story. I don't know whether it was a measure of intergenerational trauma, whether it was the shame that accrued from what had happened to her and the life she had lived. But no one wanted to speak to me about my great-grandmother and who she was, mostly because they didn't know. That oral history, unlike the way it exists in African families, was just not carried through over generations, purposely, if you ask me. And so that was when the search for her began. And I found little bits of her in the archive, Nwabisa. So, for example, I see that she arrives on a ship called the Madras, the Laurel Madras, in 1884. I see her siblings arrive on that ship with her. She's a young woman of about 21 or 22. A year later, her brother Kumaran leaves as an invalid after being employed on the Natal government railways with her and the other siblings. And so, they're little bits of history that I was able to pull out. And then all of a sudden, she disappears from the archive for 30 years. And then she reappears in a textbook, a history textbook called Many Lives, 150 Years of Being Indian in South Africa. And there she is. She's a much older woman by now. She's seated, and her sister is standing to the one side of her, and a little boy. And she's been categorized under the section of women who were able to overcome the hardships of indenture to make a life for themselves here and a life for their families. Women who married across the racial barrier, who were able to educate their children despite the difficulties which they experienced, and who were able to set in motion incremental progress for every generation that came after them. And when I look at that picture, I mean, the look in her eyes is indiscernible to me, right? I don't know what it is. I don't know whether she looks into that camera with the gaze of a woman who is slightly ashamed because she's poor. She's very poorly dressed. She has no shoes on her feet. You can see this is a woman who has performed hard labor for a number of decades in her life. Or I don't know whether there's just a sliver of pride in the fact that she has survived indenture. She's had these children she has managed to educate. She has put a roof over their heads. She's put food on the table. And she's created a life for the generations that have come after her that she will never know, including me. Gazing back into the past that way was just such a powerful thing for me. Yeah. And you being a storyteller. That was how the book was born.
And you being a storyteller, by nature, do you think, I mean, you and I have been in the media industry, and I can relate to a certain extent to just the difficulties of this industry, right? and sometimes the obstacles that one has to particularly go through, particularly if you're a woman. And I just wonder sometimes, hearing that story and looking at you now, I just wonder at times if, do you believe that Joanne if there was something that just kind of drove you to say, I want to be a person that those who came before me can look at and think, actually, you know what, we've done well.
I hadn't thought about that when I was younger, to be honest, Nwabisa. That is an idea that developed in the last few years as the book developed. But it became very clear to me that there were certain things in the family that had been carried through the women, one generation after another. So there were mornings, for example, I mean, when I had my first job, I was still a full-time student, and I was fortunate, before I turned 21, to be chosen as the morning newsreader at YFM. That was my first gig. So I was very fortunate that I didn't have to do what my mother warned me not to do, because I'm a very clumsy person. She said, please, do anything, but don't get a job as a waitress, where you spill hot coffee on people and then they sue us because you have no money at this stage. But I was very fortunate to land that first job of being the morning newsreader, but it was tough. I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I had to be at work at 4. I finished at 9. I had to go to lectures afterwards because I was still a full-time student. And then I often worked in the theatre till 10, 11 o'clock at night, sometimes later. So for a period of my life, all I did was sleep and work. I didn't know at the time. I couldn't quite put my finger on what kept me going. I didn't feel like it. I wanted to go out and jawl, like the other kids at university, and have a good time. And that wasn't always possible. There was always the sense, especially having emerged from apartheid, there's always the sense that it's going to be different for us.
Of course, yeah.
The kids who can afford to go out and have a great time and study at the same time and pass well, I always had the sense that wasn't me. It was never going to be me. I was always going to have to work harder for what I got in order to succeed. But I now trace that back to my great-grandmother, to her kind of resilience, her stoicism, her strength, her ability to withstand the crushing poverty and that kind of double oppression of living in a patriarchal community in India, leaving that community, coming to South Africa and discovering the kind of double bind of both being a woman, an Indian woman, a colonized woman, as well as a woman who crossed racial boundaries by marrying a British man at a time when it was frowned upon, and it could not even be written in the history books that they were married and had children. So she was brave. And I hope I've inherited just a little sliver of that from her.
Absolutely. Means you are on the cover of our SMAG. Beautiful cover, by the way.
Thank
I
you.
did tell our editor it's one of my faves. And we're quite intentional. I mean, you celebrated your 30th birthday this year. We're quite intentional about putting that line on the cover that says Lamise at 30. Bears all. And you've done incredibly well. I mean, you've been in the industry for 12 years.
Oh, yes.
And you really, I know, we tell the story in the magazine, you really kind of redefined being the it girl, right? Not only for your generation, but you've really become a person who has said, this is who I am, this is what I do it exceptionally well, but I don't necessarily have to conform. Did you at any point feel a sense of, do I even belong in this industry? And if you did, how did you brush that off?
Wow, where do I start? One, it is an honor just sitting here amongst, such amazing women and listening to your stories. But for me, I think it's really important that I say that the cover wasn't just my moment. The cover was for every woman. It was for every woman who was told she wasn't enough. It was for every woman who felt like her thighs were too big. Every woman who was told that she has too much cellulite. Every woman that was told she's too dark. Every woman that was told there's nothing special about her. And, to answer your question, yes, there were many times where I felt that way. Many times where I felt I wasn't enough. Where I didn't like what I saw in the mirror. And not because there was something wrong with me, but more because there is everything wrong with society. And, my bagging the Sowetan cover this year was such a big moment, because that was me taking back my power. That was me showing all the little girls, well, women of all ages that look up to me, that we're enough. Redefining what the it girl for me was, one, if you look at how society makes it seem as if though there's only space and only room for one to win or one to shine.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, that girl was either very skinny or she was light-skinned and she had long hair. And she was perfect according to what society deems perfect. And for me, I've always preached that, guys, not even the girl in the magazine looks like the girl in the magazine. And
Trust.
had it not been for the weather, chances are I would have worn this skirt without the stockings, with my cellulite, with my stretch marks, with my thunder thighs, and everything that society had made me feel was not enough. Everything that society had made me feel was a flaw. So yes, there were many times when I felt that way, but cutting my hair for me was me taking back my power. Getting all the tattoos and my expressing who I am was me taking back my power and just fully being free and comfortable with who I am and what I see in the mirror, and not subscribing to what society deems fit. Doing what I do, for the longest time, being a DJ, was deemed a male-dominated industry. Yeah. And when I started 12 years ago, there's literally, you could count the amount of women on one hand. And it warms my heart to see that we've paved the way for so many women. We've paved the way for so many women. And being a woman in South Africa for me right now is both a blessing and a curse. It is also being the question and the answer. It is in taking back your power. It is in, just redefining societal norms on what a woman should be. And that cover, for me, again, was not just my moment. It was for every woman. It was just showing you guys that you're enough and, that it really is our time.
Do you think that, one of the things I do appreciate about you is that you're very honest about how you feel at any given time, right? There's no, or everything is kind of always hunky-dory. When you are tired of doing the work, you're saying, guys, I'm actually tired today. When you are excited, you're excited. And I just wonder, I think one of your superpowers is really your authenticity. But I wonder sometimes if you ever feel like, I just want to not be part of this for a moment, and how do you revive yourself back into the game? And the importance of that question for you, the importance of that question is that I think so many of us put ourselves under pressure to constantly be there because we're wanting to constantly show up for ourselves. But how do you take care of yourself, but still doing, the work that you still need to do?
So one, I think it's really important that I say, I don't like this fame thing. I don't like being a public figure. I don't like that my life is constantly under a microscope. And sometimes it gets a bit too much. I think 90% of the time, it all just feels too heavy for me. Because one, you're expected to be perfect all the time. You're expected to sound a certain way all the time. You're not allowed to be tired. You're not allowed to be sick. You go to a hospital and people are literally following you in the hospital for a picture. You've lost a loved one and you're crying and you look a mess. And people insist on taking pictures and you're just forced to drop whatever it is that you're feeling, or else you're going to trend on social media for being unfriendly. But in that same breath, I think it's really important that people understand that before I am Lemise Holworthy, the public figure, before you see me on television or hear me on radio or see me playing for thousands of people, I am Lemise, my mom's child. I am Lemise Kulani Murule's wife. I am Lemise, a mother. I am Lemise, a sister. And just like you, I have bad days. Just like you, I wake up sometimes and I don't like what I see in the mirror. Just like you, I have problems and things that stress me out. But my biggest blessing is definitely my support structure. It is having my mom, who's actually here today.
Mom is here, by the way.
My mom, who's my manager, and my mom's been my manager from the get-go. DJing was my mom's idea. But also just knowing that my mom had sacrificed so much for me to not only be who I am today, but for me to exist is all the reason that I need to push. And I think something else that pushes me is when you don't come from much, the fear of going back So I work really hard. And because of that, I know that I've earned and I deserve where I am right now. So it's the thought of not going back to where I was 12 years ago, but it is also just looking at my mom and all the sacrifices that my mom made for my siblings and I. It is the fact that my mom chose me where, when I was born, it was literally a crime. Like my mom literally had to choose between me and her family, because my mom comes from an Indian family, and her having a black child was taboo. And my mom was seen as a disgrace. And, my mom loved me and she chose me. And she was so intentional in the way that she raised me. And that is why I cut my hair, because for the longest time, I would hide behind weaves. And my mom would say, but you've got beautiful hair. You need to embrace your natural hair. For the longest time, my mom would say, the color of your skin is amazing. And I didn't get it as a child, but now I do, because she was preparing me for just how tough the world is. She was preparing me for the questions like, are you adopted? Is your mom the maid? Why don't you look like your family? So if not for me and, just fulfilling all that the little me had wanted, it's definitely for my mom, because my mom sacrificed so much for me. She literally chose me over the world. And, that's what keeps me going.
Beautiful.
So I'm going to open the floor for conversation. I see there's a mic there. I'm not sure if there's somebody. Emmanuel, do you mind helping me with the mic? But before I do, I just want to take just 30 seconds and just to ask you guys each the same question, right? And that question is, if you can remember a moment where you then knew that, having done this, this is how I'm changing the game. This is how I'm being intentional about what I'm doing. I know many of us, we do what we do because, every day this is what you do, and you're really trying to do it to the best of your ability. But if you can remember a certain moment where you thought to yourself, Mabo, you are literally changing the game now. And what is that moment? Just very briefly in 30 seconds.
Sure. Thanks, Nwabisa. I think for me, it always relates back to what I do in my professional and personal space, which is transformation in all aspects. And for me, it was to say, if I don't drive transformation from a personal interest, then I'll do it for the paycheck. So, and I realized that it was a passion that I had, and joining mining industry that was male-dominated, I found an opportunity to be that change for the women that were there and those that were coming. And quickly, there was a culture in the mining industry back then where it was so notorious that swearing was just a norm, and I was quite uncomfortable. So I had a choice to either do I join the bus or do I change it? Secondly, meetings will start at 6 o'clock. And at that time, I was a single mother of a very young child. And I thought, but if the meeting is not so fruitful that it can start at 6 o'clock, and it was just lambasting, and it was uncomfortable. And I said, this is the moment where I'm going to change it. And I really fought against that status quo at the time. And I demanded that this meeting will start at the time where ordinary office hours are there, because it's all about reporting. And the swearing will stop. We're going to be very professional, because it's not that I can't swear, but because I want to be professional in my space and I want to be comfortable in how I do this. So I think that particular moment, it was when I really was setting the tone, over and above the other things that I really shake the table and even step on the toes that I shouldn't, just for the benefit of the women that are coming after me. So I think that is it for me. Thanks.
Joy?
Nwabisa, I'm not sure what the answer to that is. I have not thought of myself as a person who's moving the needle or making great change in my industry. There are lots of other people who've done a lot more for the industry than I have. But it occurred to me that I might unconsciously be doing that in two ways. The first, of course, was encountering a lot of young women in the newsroom who needed support and were not getting it in terms of training, mentoring, and so on. And I've pushed very hard in the last few years for more women in my team. I want to train younger women. I have done quite a lot of mentoring with them, helped build their confidence, help them have the conversations with bosses who don't want to increase their salary when they're working a certain number of hours that merit a particular income. So that has happened in the newsroom fairly frequently. And in fact, when I left my radio job, we had an all-women behind-the-scenes team.
Oh, wow.
That was really important. They were powerful. They were really, really powerful. And they drove the ship. And I was literally just the person on the front line, kind of delivering the content that all of us had devised together. And then in terms of the book, I'm hearing from a lot of women, particularly black women, who are saying to me, we knew something happened to us a few hundred years ago, but we weren't able to quite put our finger on it. And we talk about decolonization, but what are we wrenching out of ourselves? What are we trying to extract out of ourselves? And if we don't know what actually happened to us, how do we go about decolonizing or getting over what happened to our ancestors or the intergenerational trauma that's traveled through into us? And I'd like to think that the book has done some work in answering those questions. And hopefully, my having moved from a regular 5-day media platform into a kind of literature that's talking to people in a different way, women in particular, has done something to change their thinking.
You have, actually, absolutely. I can absolutely vouch for that. Lamise?
So for me, I always say that I became the black superhero that I needed to see growing up. So one, how I knew that I'm on the right track is when I had women who started dressing like me, is when I had women who cut their hair and embraced their natural hair because of me. It is when I'd have women of all ages and little girls that would come up to me and say, look, I'm wearing shorts for the first time.
Yeah.
And that for me is that was super important, just knowing that there are women of all shapes and sizes who are more comfortable in their own skin because of me, that there are women who are over 40 who are getting their first tattoos because they found their freedom and they are so comfortable in who they are, and they just love expressing who they are. And that for me was what I needed to remind me that I'm on the right track and that I'm not crazy, for being different, that I'm not crazy for pushing, my agenda. And my agenda is just that we're real women with real problems and real issues. And yes, I have cellulite, and yes, I have a big bum, and I have a belly, but I'm still gonna wear my bikini. So that for me was when I knew that I had made it. And I think when I bagged Live Amp, that had... was the biggest music show in our country with millions of viewers. And my first show, I had on a yellow leather skirt, and it was really short. And I had these really big thighs, and I trended. And I trended because, not only because, one, I'm this girl from Pretoria, and that was unheard of, on mainstream media. But also because I was this big girl, I was dark-skinned, and I had on the short skirt, and I was on this TV show that had millions of viewers, and millions of women saw themselves in me. And I think that for me was when I knew that I was on the right track.
It's absolutely profound, really, really profound. I think when we become ourselves, we absolutely give permission for others to really be. And it's like, it's a norm. There's no, you need to be a certain way, you need to look a certain way. I'm happy to take questions. I see Andy in front of me.
Good morning, Nwabisa. Thank you for creating this space for, I think, us women to gather. And thank you to the panelists for your insightful thoughts. I think I have a couple of things to say. I think the first thing is that I really believe that the revolution will be led by women. Women are the usherers of new realities. And if history is anything to go by, history is teaching us that. I think part of the reason why we struggle to recalibrate the system and to change it is because it is near impossible to change a system that is largely built on imbalance and, I guess, the lack of equity, right? And I really believe in the power, I think, for us women to start building parallel systems before we collapse this current system. We have tried for years, we've soldiered on, we've created commissions and everything in between to address the inequality of things, to address diversity, inclusion, belonging, and all the buzzwords that are coming in, and it's not working. And that is because you cannot change a system that is built on hierarchy, where particularly men get the lion's share of the benefit. And so until we understand the crux of the problem, we'll continue to deal with the symptoms of it. And I really think that women need to be ahead of those conversations, and we are the only ones who can change it for ourselves. And whilst I say that, I think it's also equally important, I think, to amplify the voices of the allies that we have from the men who understand their privilege, the men who understand how they've moved through the world so easily, right, with little effort, with little performance. I want to maybe, just closing, for the women that are in this room that hold space and tables, please make it easier for the other women behind you to occupy those tables. Yeah. I'm getting incredibly tired of having to be gracefully angry about the women who hold on to power at the expense of other women. I violently stand for women and the agenda of women in all spaces that I occupy. And I constantly find this narrative of those who either have walked ahead of us or beside us. And they occupy spaces and they get into these tables and they hold on to them. Or otherwise they give away seats that are uncomfortable to other women. So my call out to those of us that are in the rooms and spaces that we move in, make it easy. You know how difficult it is to enter those rooms. You know how difficult it is to sit at those tables. Make it easy. And so if we're going to, I think, have these conversations, I should hope that we will lower the veil of superficiality around what inclusion really means, and I think the work that we do. But I really, really believe there is no ways of changing the system. I think it's the same tricky conversation we have around religion and, economy, right? Economic and political systems don't respond to good ideas. They respond to violent pressure. And until, as women in this room and in the spaces that we move in, we are tired of being gracefully angry. Because that's the expectation from society, right? We must keep it cute. You can't just be embogodo and be out here and be toy-toying and whatever, right? There's all these negative narratives. But these things have shown us time and time again that it doesn't move the needle. So it's time we get tired of being gracefully angry. It doesn't solve anything. But more importantly, for us to gather around each other and to build parallel systems so that when we're ready to collapse this current system that we're in, that there's a system that is ready to absorb all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good day, everyone. My name is Pindile Qindi, Director of PCA Trading and Projects. Sis Nwabisa, thank you so much for this event, and it's really an honor for me to be here, and I'm grateful. Okay, my question goes to Sisi Nwabisa. Yes, Mabusane. Sorry. Yes. My sister, you see, my question actually is, because I'm in construction, we do general building and civil work. Yes, and we also accredited services. That's how we do trainings for new venture creation. So my question to you is, for us women, all of us, but I will say construction, since I've been trying to get into mining, and learn, how do we break barriers for women to be involved or to be recognized in mining industry? How do I do that? What programs do you have for women where we can participate, women empowerment? How do I get in? How do I do that? Because so far I've been trying, submitting tenders, doing all that, trying to find a way in and to be empowered and recognized. How do I do that? How do we do that as women?
Right.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Abi, do you wanna take that now, or should we take another question and
We can
come back?
take another question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tiny, just behind you, Emmanuel. Oh, okay, all right.
Greetings, everyone. I have a question for Mabu as well. You have such a big responsibility as a head of learning, development, and transformation. How do you keep showing up? Who has held your ladder in supporting you to be where you are?
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Swan, for that question.
Thank you. Hi, ladies. You look beautiful. My question is, I mean, even to the editor, all the ladies on the panel, what would you tell your younger self now that you've gone through what you've gone through, now that we also draw strength from the history of a mother who came from India and show resilience, tenacity, and to where the generation before us has given that whatever kind of baton they've given us, what would you tell your younger self? The reason I'm asking the question because it's going to open a can of worms for every woman who are here today, because we seem to forget what brought us to where we are today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tiny Mabo. I think let's start with the question just about getting in.
Yes, yes. Thank you. And look, the question that, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
Pindile.
Yes. Pindile. The question that Pindile has got, I think it is sitting with every other businesswoman that wants to really get into the mining. Because obviously mining is big. We have the biggest contribution in the South African GDP, and opportunities should be there. And I'm really carefully using the word should be, because I do understand that when you look at the supply chain and the procurement space within mining industry, it's got a background of having old contractors, big, others not even South African. But I think from a legislative drive where the mining charter came in place and so forth, I think I would respond more so for the company that I work for. That transformation, we looked at transformation not only from an employment equity representation point of view, but we looked at transformation from all the pillars of the mining charter. And we then said, we want to go beyond the compliance. So within the procurement space, there is a strategy that we have adopted where we are very intentional about women companies and women empowerment that are coming into our space. Within our procurement space, we host women empowerment sessions, what we call the enterprise development programs for people that are coming into our space. And also for those long-standing contracts that have been in the mining, we now starting to introduce within our strategy what we call the incubation programs, where we look at a service provider that has been in our space for the longest period of time, and you look at the expenditure as well when you say, for your next 5 years, we would want you to adopt a female contractor. You incubate, there's a portion of the services that you need to provide. That is done in a most facilitated, most structured program, and we've got our team in the procurement space that are doing that for us. And we can avail, when you go into our website, when you look at the Harmony Procure portal and so forth, you are able to get all those information. But in a nutshell, we are very intentional because how we reporting as well from a legislative requirement, we go beyond that, where we actually do track female service providers or female-owned companies, and we also do track the expenditure there, because we don't only want to give women catering services and so forth. We've got our core services and our non-core services, and we have very competent individuals in that space that are tracking all of these things. And you're welcome to engage me after this, and then I can provide you more information around that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that.
And on the second
yes.
question, I really do believe that to be where I am, somebody spoke about me behind that door and said my name, you know, to say, I think Mabu can do this. And had it not been for an opportunity that I was given, I don't think I would be where I was, because I actually swam in my first position, where I was responsible for over 3,000 people to manage, very, very fresh, very young and so forth. But I got to realize that really somebody spoke about me behind closed doors where there were opportunities. And that particular individual created an opportunity for me. So I'm making it my everyday strive to say, at the end of the year, how many people have I created opportunities for? And it can be in any other space. It can be in saying, well, I'll speak about the company that I work for as well, that as a transformation manager, I become a pain in areas we don't want to mention. Whenever there's an appointment that is not in line with our employment equity strategy, they know it doesn't matter at what level. If there's no Mabu's signature on that document, and I will be asking questions, because there was a very generic line to say we could not find candidates that fit the profile. And I said, can I have a look at the list of the candidates that you said they are not qualifying? What about the internal individuals and so forth? So I get to get into this uncomfortable conversations in an effort to make sure that women are being given an opportunity because somebody else created an opportunity for me.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if I've covered what you were asking. I can mention a lot of names in the space that really contributed to where I am. And I think for me, it is to say whenever I'm in a boardroom and they're talking about a structural change, and I'm like, what about so and so? What about so and so? And I think that's really how I really create that space for other women. Thank you.
Absolutely. Tiny's asking, thank you. Tiny's asking, Tiny is my colleague, by the way, who really works hard to really support what we do, and she's a member of the Women's Club. So thank you very much, Tiny, for being here. She's asking what, and I'll pose the question to you, Joanne, and Lamise.
Okay.
What you would tell your younger selves?
Two things, probably, just to hang in there, because things will work themselves out. You'll make it. I doubted that for many years, and eventually did make it, and was relieved to find that I actually had the ability to do that. But there's something else that I was told just a few years ago that has made a huge difference to my work as a writer and a broadcaster. It was told to me by a male programming manager who said to me, don't be afraid to be disliked. It's such an important thing. I mean, the penny dropped. What you were saying a moment ago, Lamise, about not being accepted or not playing into the kind of conventional stereotypes of beauty. When you become a woman with a voice, you are going to be disliked. Prepare yourself for that. And grow a thick enough skin to be able to withstand that. Because people are not going to like what you have to say. People are not going to like the fact that you are given a voice in the first place, right? So I've had people phone into my show and say to my producer, why can't Joanne be sweeter? Literally, in so many words. You know, I like it when she's nice. You know, and then I've got my producer on the phone for half an hour while I'm trying to do the rest of the show, explaining to this man why his patriarchy is driving his comment, right? This is how it's always going to be for us. There are people who have believed and who still continue to believe that we don't deserve a voice, that we don't deserve the space, that we don't deserve leadership roles, and that when we are assertive and firm and do what we have to do to succeed for ourselves, for our families, for our organizations, that we're aggressive, that we're nasty women. So be it, if that's what we're considered. We do what we have to do to have a voice and to make sure that other women in the room have a space. So that's probably been my most useful learning.
Absolutely. Absolutely can relate, by the way. Lamise?
I think the most important one is listen to your mom. She's not crazy. that would definitely be the first thing I'd tell a younger me. But also that I'm not crazy, that little girl isn't crazy for thinking, there's something special about her. And it's not going to be easy, but it is definitely going to be worth it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What I would tell my younger self, learn to forgive yourself quicker.
Yep.
And that's really it, really. Learn to forgive yourself quicker, because we hold on so much to mistakes that we make, and they limit what we do, they limit who we are. So that's really it for me. Ladies, we are almost running out of time, but I do want to take just perhaps one or two very quick questions to my panelists, if there are, and then we can wrap it up. We've got 5 minutes to go for this event, but also importantly for the broadcast. So you can go ahead, Siswam, ask your question.
Good morning, ladies. My name is Lorata. This is for Lamise. Lamise, as a mom, as a wife, how do you navigate or how do you switch off when you get home as a celebrity? Because usually, yes, you go to work, you have a bad day. You go through these social medias and there's this bad stuff that's happening. How do you go then back home to your family and you switch off and you become the present mom, the present wife? Because like you said, you guys are also human beings. And your kids don't know what's happening in the social media. They don't know what happened at work. So how do you transition and you become, mom who switched off from all this and you become present?
Thank you very much.
Most importantly, having my mom as my manager. My mom has found a way, I don't know how, but my life is pretty balanced. And my biggest blessing is in being with a man that understands the work that I do, who is not intimidated by who I am and where I am in my career right now. But also because we're not driven. Our lives are not dictated by the fame. And, the minute we get home, celebrity bafela. Like the minute you walk into that door, you are Kulani Murule, my husband. Kulichano tlamukrago strate. Same as me. Time with my family is really important. And just being able to do the goofy stuff, being able to play a game or watch a movie or watch a series, or have my nephew who lives with me, my little boy, sing a song or play an instrument. That for me is really important. But I think it is really important, for anyone in the industry, because I've seen how, the fame and the attention and, just wanting more money and more ends up controlling your life. And it gets to a point where they are no longer able to differentiate between who you are on stage and who you are at home. So for me, it's really important. The minute I get home, I am Lamise, ke ngwana Imelda. Bu DJ re tla bo bona kwa. There's nothing, fame, I will do what I have to do as a mom. I will do what I have to do as a wife. I will do what I have to do as a daughter. And that for me is what's most important, because these are the people that understand and appreciate me for me. And if I can't give them the best version of myself, then it would have been a loss. It would be an injustice to, contribute so much of my time into how I look and how I speak and how I sound and how I perform, and neglect, the most important people, and that's, my loved ones. So I think for me, it's just always remembering that I'm not defined by the fame, this could end tomorrow and I'll be left with my loved ones. And it's just giving them the best version of me, always. And blocking out the noise. Yeah.
Very important. Okay, sure.
One, to Lamise, you're beautiful, you're confident, you draw attention as a public figure. How do you show up for others in your life? I mean, I can imagine, let's say you're part of a bridal party. There's a bride who's supposed to be a center of attention, and here you are. How do you deal with that? And before you answer, to Joanne quickly, thank you for your book. I'm going to read it and pass it on to my daughters. You are eloquent. Has it always been like that, or did you receive some form of training?
I'm going to go first, Louise.
That's okay, you can answer, I'll go after.
Okay, well, I studied drama at university, but I started at school with a really powerful woman drama teacher who changed the course of my life. And I think because I did drama at school and university, it probably helped a little bit with my training for TV. Yeah.
You asked me two questions. How do I show up for my loved ones, and how do I deal with is it upstaging? Is that the word? Overshadowing others. I think the most important thing, and I think I answered that in my previous answer, is because I love my people so much, I go all out for them. But also just making them feel special is by giving them my time. It is because I work 90% of the time. And as tired as I am, it is in taking time out for date night. It is in making time to go to my little boy's school concert. It is in dropping him off at a piano lesson. It is in just showing up for my loved ones, in the little way that I can. In that same breath, it does get really hard where, it's not my wedding. Why do you want to take pictures with me? So I am very stern and I put my foot down. Because people, man, like people do weird stuff. And this happened actually sometime last year where I was invited to a wedding. Well, both my husband and I were invited to a wedding. And, we got there and people ran to us for pictures. And I was taking a picture with the bride. And it became very awkward because, this woman says, she comes to the bride and says, oh, my mom says I must take a picture with you and Lamise. So I'm like, but it's not my wedding. And I think it is really important for you to stand your ground and let people know time and place is really important. This day is not about me. It is about the bride, and that is who we're going to celebrate. So no, I'm not going to take your picture. I think that's just really important. I know that there are people that do the total opposite, and that is when you're so driven by the attention that you can't help but take it, even when the moment is not yours. And I've learned this from my husband, God bless him. Kulani has a way of camouflaging when it is my moment. I don't know how he does it, but he does. He is able to be Kulichana, who is famous and well celebrated, but still give me my moment. So that is where I learned how to do that. I learned how to give people their moments to shine and just somehow camouflage and be one with everyone else. I think that's really important.
It is important.
It can only be 20 seconds. Okay.
I think this is a safe space, so my question is addressed to all the peerless women on stage, and it's is the one thing that most women will be surprised to learn about you guys?
Sure. You see why he's the editor of S-Mag, you guys. Mabo?
Well, for me, I think in my personal space, I am crazy. I am loud. I've got 2 teenagers, and I've got 2 young ones. And young, I mean 11 months and 2 years, and 18 and 19.
Wow.
So when I get home, if you get an insight of what I do when I get home from being corporate serious meeting, when I get home, my goodness, I am that village mother. So I think that is one thing that people will be so surprised because they think, Mabu, you're always this. No, I get home, I cook mushrooms, I eat that, I am with the kids, I'm like flat. So yeah, I think that is the one thing I loved, because one person then said, "Haibo, Mabo, was that you?" So yes.
Thank you so much. Joanne?
I think probably I'm a total slob at home. I hate dressing up. Nwabisa, I have to confess, this is the first forum where I've ever said it. But it pains me to put high heels on, ladies. I will walk off the stage and you'll see me put my flats on immediately, because I can't bear to walk around in these shoes. I don't like the makeup. I don't like dressing up. I like being in tracksuit pants or shorts and T-shirts or jeans. That's actually me. And this is what I've had to do for my job for 25 years.
Yeah.
Right? But I'm happy with where I am when I don't look like this. And I think it's been important for my daughter to see that sort of distinction between sometimes you've got to dress up and sometimes you've got to put on a face and whatever. Yeah. But as often as possible, try and be yourself.
Three things. One, I am the biggest mama's baby. I still suck my thumb at 30. I am very sensitive, like contrary to what people see and what I put on. I cry. I cry. But I think the biggest one, that shocks a lot of people, and I think only once they start paying attention is where they pick it up, is that I am very shy. I am shy. Like I am shy. And, I watch my videos, like when I play or when I listen to myself on radio or when I do television, I'm just like, who is this girl? I watch myself when I play and I'm dancing and my mom has always said it and now I see it, like, because I finally get to see it, on my phone. Like my mom would always say, you come alive when you play. You're a different person. My mom would get very emotional when she'd watch me play. But there's a reason why when I walk into spaces, my head is always down. I'm always on my phone. Like I keep myself busy with my phone. So I'll always play a word game or just anything to avoid looking at people because they scare me. So yeah, I think the biggest one is that I'm super shy, contrary to, this persona that I put on and how confident I come across as, people scare me. Yeah.
Jeebus, I don't know. Besides being deeply introverted, seriously, I mean, leading a publication and being a person who's so much in your thoughts. So besides that, I think for me, probably the most surprising thing is it's an image thing. So one of the most difficult decisions I've had to take sort of in the last 2 years was shaving off my head. And I had to do it because I had alopecia. So, and it's amazing how people would come to me and say, oh my word, you look amazing. In my head, I was like, really? I think it took me sort of the last year to look at myself with absolutely no hair and think, yeah, but you're hot, eh? And yes, it's a combination of people saying that to me, but also me growing up. I turned 40 this year, me growing up and realizing actually what you were saying, a lot of what you were saying, actually I'm enough. I'm more than enough. This is me, this is who I am, and take me as I am. And I really celebrate myself. So I think that's probably one thing that will probably be more quite surprising. Ladies, thank you so much, Mabo, Joanne, and Lemise. I really did enjoy this conversation. Thank you for honoring the invitation. Thank you for sharing your insights. And thank you for everything that you do in the spaces that you do. I want to say thank you again to Gautrain and the Gautrain team. Thank you for your amazing support and partnering with us on this event. We were really looking forward to it. We thought, August 31st, to close off Women's Month as the Sowetan Women's Club, really with a bang. So we want to say we really do appreciate your support. And to all our members and everybody who is in the room, really this club can be nothing without you. Thank you for always showing up. Thank you for always being consistent in the support that you give to us. From myself and the rest of the Sowetan team, Jabulela, thank you very much.